Welcome back. Senate Republicans looking to hit the ground running next year after expanding their majority in the midterms. But there are still goals they want to achieve in the remainder of 2018. My next guest will play a major role in shaping the party's agenda. Joining me right now is Republican Senator from Missouri, Roy Blunt. He has just been elected as the chairman of the Senate Republican Policy Committee. That is the chamber's fourth-ranking GOP leadership position. And, Senator, congratulations to you. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you, Maria. Great to be with you.
What are the priorities in the new Congress?
Well, I think in the new Congress, one of our priorities is going to continue to be to confirm judges. You know, we're in the personnel business, unlike the House, and so the fact that the House has changed control really has no impact on that. What has impact on that is it looks like there are going to be 53 Republicans in the Senate instead of 51, and you can do a lot more with 53 than 51. You get a little more flexibility to maybe stretch a little bit more on someone that couldn't be appointed if it took absolutely every Republican, but could be if it took almost all the Republicans. So we'll see. You know, we've made great impact on the judiciary branch, not just the 2 Supreme Court seats, but 1 out of 6 of the Court of Appeals judges are now people who've been nominated by President Trump, confirmed by the Republican Senate. We're going to continue this year between now and December 31 to try to clear the calendar of those judges and others who are out of committee, and then to try to give the president the team that he needs to implement what he was elected to do. It's been one of the big obstacles that Democrats in the Senate have thrown in our way, something that's never happened before, the denial of a president to have his team, and they have effectively used every tool they had to slow that process down.
You know, the judiciary namings probably has been one of the president's biggest accomplishments. I want to get you to talk to us more about that and confirming judicial nominees. What about Senator Flake's resistance? I mean, you talk about the resistance coming from the Dems. It's coming from even within your own party. Senator Flake's resisting in this in order to get Mueller legislation to make sure nobody messes with Robert Mueller's investigation.
You know, and to make that, I think, even more concerning, there's really nobody threatening to mess with the Mueller investigation. Almost all of my colleagues, my Republican colleagues in the Senate, along with me, have publicly and repeatedly said how important it is to let that investigation go forward. Let's get it behind us. Let's not stop and have to start again. You know, the legislation that Senator Flake would like to see voted on would have to be signed by the president. It is clearly not going to happen, and why we would use up that time when we could be making these kind of lifetime changes in the judiciary is amazing to me. I think we're still going to figure out a way to do that, and we need to move forward. I think, Maria, on the Mueller dismissal side of the discussion, there's a huge constitutional reason not to believe that the Congress can decide who works in the judiciary branch. So, along with many others, I've said repeatedly, Mr. President, it would be a big mistake to not let this investigation go forward, but I'm not going to be for any legislation that would violate the constitutional separation of powers. If we wanted to have somebody the president couldn't fire, there's a way to do that. It was called the independent counsel, and that didn't turn out to be, in any case that I'm aware of, a very helpful thing.
Well, I want to get back to that because I want to ask you about all of these investigations coming and how you're going to deal with it. But let me stay on the judiciary for a moment. Do you expect the president will have an opportunity to name a 3rd Supreme Court justice before Election Day 2020?
Well, you don't know. You never know. I do know that having that actual vacancy in 2016 was much more focusing than the idea that there could be a vacancy. Of course, there always could be a vacancy. I think you would think that there's some likely opportunity that could happen. But having a chance to put 2 judges on the court, 2 judges that with good health are likely to serve for 3 decades is the real long-term impact that a president has to make on the country. A lot of things can be reversed. Who you put on the court that can serve that has a lifetime appointment can make a big difference for decades after you leave the White House or decades after you leave the Senate. This is clearly, this is important. Who's in the Senate, who controls the Senate, as who controls the White House.
Senator, stay with us. I want to ask you about 2020 coming up and whether or not the president's tone may change going into the new election. We'll be right back with more from Senator Roy Blunt. Welcome back to Sunday Morning Futures, and I'm back with Senator Roy Blunt. And Senator, we were just having a discussion with Congresswoman Liz Cheney about this incredible divisiveness going on, really on both sides, whether it's divisiveness in terms of what's happening within the government and their approach to President Trump, or on the Democratic side, this lurch all the way to the left. Look at Claire McCaskill in your state losing to Josh Hawley and basically saying, look, I'm not a crazy Democrat, and calling out her colleagues for going so left. Your reaction to Claire McCaskill's loss?
Well, in a state like ours, where I think voters have gotten more conservative as a group over time, but still a lot of voters in the middle, I think Claire's message was pretty important for our voters to hear. But it was with the backdrop of a state where the president is probably as popular as he is anywhere. His approval ratings much higher in Missouri on Election Day this time than they were when he was elected president in 2016. And his efforts for Attorney General Hawley, his efforts in Senate races around the country exceeded anything that I think any president has ever done as a campaigner for a ticket that their name was not on. And it made a difference in Missouri. It made a difference in these other states as well. It's one of the reasons that while we lost seats in the House, our margin in the Senate is going to go up, and that gives us some ability in the Senate that we wouldn't have had otherwise to do things that let the president have the team he needs to put his agenda in place.
Do you expect the president's tone to change or shift in any way?
I really don't. I really don't. I think the American people got exactly the person they elected as president of the United States. I think that's going to continue. I think, Maria, what Democrats in the House are going to find surprising, and probably a lot of people in the media are going to find surprising, is while the other people who've been president would hate the idea of investigations. I'm sure the president would rather have a Republican House, but I think he will vigorously engage in a public way in these investigations if the Democrats try to pursue them. Probably the best thing Democrats could do in the House would be legislate rather than investigate. But if they investigate, they're going to have an active participant talking about how those investigations are being conducted in the White House, and that participant's going to be the President of the United States. Right,
and will those claims or lawsuits fall flat in the Senate?
Well, if it has to be House and Senate cooperation on these investigations, clearly that's not likely to happen. I think you're just going to see a level of engagement in past White Houses. If the Congress is investigating something, generally the White House message was fully cooperate, don't have much to say about this. I don't see the president not having much to say if there's an investigation going on. Frankly, I think it just gives him a different thing to talk about every day of the week, and he will continue to dominate that discussion in the next 2 years, the news discussion, just like he has in the last 2 years.
What about the discussion around what took place during the 2016 election, where we know that a cabal of people at the top of the FBI and the Department of Justice, like Peter Strzok and Andrew McCabe and Bruce Orr and Jim Comey, tried to put their finger on the scale and stop Donald Trump from winning? Will Senate Republicans pick up where House Republicans left off in terms of the investigation into the DOJ and the FBI's actions ahead of the election?
We know I'm on the House Intel Committee. We've been dealing with the Russian issues from the 2016 election, the Russian issues. But I think the answer is yes. The Judiciary Committee is almost certain to look more vigorously now at what happened in the Justice Department and the FBI during 2016. There is clearly a story to be told there. Part of that story is things that have been classified that if you get to see that classified material, you wonder what in the world about this is classified in a way that the American people couldn't know about it. I think before this is over, they're likely to know what's in those so-called classified documents, and they'll be surprised.
Yeah, we're going to talk with Devin Nunes coming up about that in terms of that investigation. Right. Real quick, let me get back to business and appropriations. I spoke with the chairman and CEO of Boeing, who had some important comments, certainly about the Lion Air crash, but also about defense spending and what he's expecting in the next couple of years. I want to see if you agree with this. Listen to this.
We see the defense budget here in the U.S. being sustained, and if you look back a couple of years when we were in the middle of sequestration, we feel like we're in a stronger budget position now on both sides of the aisle. So we look to the U.S. defense budget to remain strong, but we also see growth around the world. Today, about a third of our defense backlog is outside of the U.S.
Interesting that a third of the backlog is outside the United States, but what are the priorities from your standpoint in terms of defense spending?
We know the headquarters for the Boeing defense operations in St. Louis. We're proud of the workers there and proud of what happens there in our state and in our neighboring states. Certainly, we do see more of a commitment to long-term planning in terms of defense, where you not only have some orders for this year, but also orders in future years, so you can keep that line open in a more efficient way. We got way behind in the previous decade, the Obama decade, in our defense capacity. It's showing, and everybody who understands the military knows we've got some significant catching up to do, and I think we began that in a significant way this year, but we are committed to maintain that as a Senate and I believe as a country, and look forward to the importance of doing that, and also being sure that we're doing what we need to have the kind of investments to protect the military advantage we have. What the Chinese particularly are doing with their efforts to try to get inside our systems more effectively than we can defend our systems would lose our significant military advantage if we let that happen, and we can't let it happen. Again, we never want Americans to be in a fair fight. We want them to be in an unfair fight with every advantage on their side, and what we do in the next couple of years is likely to determine whether that continues to be the case or not.
Yeah, important story in the LA Times today titled, "China has taken the gloves off in its thefts of U.S. technology secrets." And that's impacting the military as well. We're going to get into that coming up next with Devin Nunes. But real quick on that, do you think China's behavior is going to change anytime soon?
I have no reason to believe it's going to change anytime soon. And where the president's talked about our trade relationship with China generally, also that discussion goes into what's happening with the military, what's happened with the military, where all of our investment in technology, all our investment in new defense systems has in so many cases been stolen by the Chinese, and then they take their money and try to build on top of what we've already done to figure out how to impact in a negative way the advantages we have.
Senator, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be with you.